Penny's joining right now.
Great. Script for remote meetings, public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in this meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. We are using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. Actually, that's not true for this meeting. You just have to attend. You don't need to register. Attendees must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode and they can click to raise their hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised. All questions should be directed through the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan, the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rima Sherry.
Here.
Dave Iverson.
Here.
Meg Browers.
Here.
Chantal Murphy.
Here.
Brooke Moore.
I'm here.
Brooke, my condolences for your mom. You lost your mom.
Thanks.
Penny Dye.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tucker Holland.
Here.
Ken Bogran.
Here.
Great, thank you. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. We have Shelley Lockwood with a presentation today. You have to take yourself off mute.
Here.
Okay, you're working. Great, thank you. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023.
Yes. Here we go.
Mary, could you please, Mary, I'm not sure your last name, if you could fill that in and then go on mute for me.
Oh, sorry about that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening via video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless noted otherwise. We'll turn to our first item on the agenda, but before we do so, please permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, we'll go down a line of members in meeting, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any responses, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their name and be acknowledged by speaking through the chair. Finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Okay, so that is out of the way. We will move to the agenda. First, I'll call the meeting to order. Next, I'll look for an action to approve the agenda or any discussion on the agenda.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Tucker.
I just was going to mention, we have a placeholder on the agenda as we typically do for closing cost applications. We don't have any to approve this week.
Great. So I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended with removing number. Why am I not seeing it right? CCAP number 4.
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
By roll call, Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Annie Dye,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. So with that, the agenda is approved. We will open public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment? We're well attended today, so thank you for joining. This is your opportunity to talk about something that's not listed on the agenda.
Am I
Seeing
on?
Seeing none, I'll close. Shelley, you're listed on the agenda. We'll come to you later.
Okay.
Thank you for the expression. I understood what you were thinking. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. And we will move to Article 18 and town meeting discussion. Item 5. Tucker, as listed, can you start this?
Sure, Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We thought that it may be useful going into town meeting next week to review a presentation that we had gone over with the Finance Committee, in particular with regard to Article 18 and funding, where monies have been spent and where future uses of monies would be intended to be spent. So I'll share my screen here and briefly go through this presentation. Can everyone see that?
We can.
Okay, thank you. This again was a presentation we had gone over with the Finance Committee in February as they were reviewing articles and making their recommendations. The board may be familiar that the Finance Committee voted unanimously to support Article 18, which is the $6.5 million override. It does have a companion ballot measure, which I believe is ballot measure 6. So these were some key terms that we all are familiar with, but we had gone over with the Finance Committee. If there are members of the public who would like me to talk about any of these, I'm happy to do so. Please just raise your hand and the chair will recognize you. But I'll skip along to, again, cover what we had gone over with the committee. This slide just reminded folks where the AMI levels are today and what the 80% level is for a variety of households on Nantucket. This was a review of Chapter 40B and basically what the requirements are of that law. So since 2019, town meeting has appropriated roughly 67 million, beginning with 25 million in 2019. The Neighborhood First article brought by Tobias Glidden and Rick Atherton. In addition, that year, there was a $5 million CPC bonding. Next year was the pandemic year, so very limited financial activity took place, as we all know. And then robust funding began back again in 2021 and continued in 2022. So for the funding that has been appropriated so far, this is a summary of where those funds have been spent, or in the next slide, you'll see where the remainder is intended to be spent. A lot of this relates to land acquisition. The Orange Street location, actually, the RFP is being issued tomorrow by the procurement department. And there is a roughly 4-month window for folks to come and do a site visit, to thoughtfully respond to that, and for proposals to be reviewed. We've done a couple of significant buy down and acceleration projects, as the board is aware, and we have helped facilitate the creation of some home ownership, a limited amount, through some good work being done by Habitat. So on the planned uses for the balance of the funds, we received some very good news this morning. The Six Fairgrounds Road Tacoma Green project recently received its award letters from the state for both the original tax credit and other subsidy allocation, in addition to the supplemental subsidy requests that had gone in last year. So that project is now able to move forward. This has been a long time coming. It will be some time before ground is broken, but this is a very significant development, and we're just very pleased to be at this point, despite some delays. I see a hand up from Brooke Moore.
Brooke, floor is yours.
I just want a shout out to our municipal housing director, Tucker Holland, who has put in, I cannot tell you how many countless hours shepherding this change and this need for additional funding through negotiations with the developers, coordination with the select board. Really, without Tucker, we would not be here. And when he called me this morning, the roof nearly blew off my house. I screamed so loud. So thanks, Tucker.
Well, thanks go to everyone on this board and to the select board and the community at large for because it's their vote of funding for housing that allows things like this to move forward. So anyway, that is obviously a significant area where the remaining funds are planned to be spent, and then there, as you can see, are allocations that go toward what we think may be required in subsidy for these different land parcels that were identified under the acquisition slide just before. So, this really is taking us to the end of the 67 million, and we have made some good progress in recent years toward reaching that 10% requirement. We've gone from basically 2%, prior to 2019, up to 6.7% today. And I would say there's a light at the end of the tunnel on, reaching that requirement with the projects that we have in the pipeline. And I would say that it probably would be next March, April, May timeframe that the closing and construction would take place with regard to Six Fairgrounds Road. They're just, even with this award, there are a number of things that still need to happen before the closing occurs and construction begins. But that timing from a subsidized housing inventory list standpoint is actually quite favorable, because that project in and of itself will begin a new 2-year period of safe harbor. We presently are in a period that runs until December of 2024. Let's say that this closes in May of 2024, that would initiate a new period as of that date. It would obviously cannibalize some of our current period, but it would be a new 2-year period, which I think we all would agree is helpful. So going forward with regard to Article 18, the uses of those funds are really, in our opinion, geared toward the following: ensuring the achievement of the 10% requirement and continuity of safe harbor. Again, on our prior slide, we noted anticipated subsidy requirements at different locations, but we won't know the actual answer until we receive proposals to the RFPs. In addition, with this funding, it would allow the trust to get into, in a really material way, providing home ownership opportunity to year-rounders. It's been a limitation, in effect, of the funding that we have available today, and a lot of it requiring inclusion on the subsidized housing inventory, that we have not been able to get into this area as much as we would like to going forward. And this new funding source would allow for that. And of course, it would allow us to continue with our successful closing cost assistance program, where we've helped a number of year-round families get into homes. And we understand from the lenders that this really, has made the difference for folks. So that was the presentation that was done to the Finance Committee. We thought it was just worth today going through that as we head into town meeting.
Are there any members from the trust questions? Penny?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Tucker. Are we going to talk specifically about the housing funding articles at all at this meeting today?
We don't have it specifically listed on the agenda by article, but I think we could encompass anything within this conversation. Is there anyone in particular you want to address?
Well, yeah, I have a serious concern about 18. Not that I don't appreciate what the town is offering, but it's going to require a Proposition 2.5 override at the ballot. And I think it's very, very risky. Just my opinion.
Are there any other thoughts or comments? It is concerning to me individually as well, Penny, right? Like a majority vote at town meeting and then a 2/3 at the ballot is going to be a challenge, and a lot of our future funding and projects are reliant on it. So hopefully the community comes out for it.
I'd like to suggest that our next meeting, which is I think May 2nd, we put this on the agenda so we can have a more in-depth discussion about it. That's still prior to town meeting.
I see Tucker taking notes to add it to a future agenda now.
Before town meeting.
Yes.
May 2nd.
Thank you.
Tucker, we might as well list all the articles and just kind of run through each one collectively.
Yep, we can do that.
Just to follow up, that's the last thing I'll say on this is I just want to understand what kind of a backup plan we have, if any, in terms of different eventualities and outcomes. Thank you.
So there are some other funding articles included in the warrant, and probably the most significant one to point out is Article 10, where there is roughly $1 million capital appropriation in conjunction with a $4 million bonding authority. So while not as robust funding as prior years, it is material. And we do have a special town meeting coming up this fall. I just mentioned.
Thank you.
Are there any other members? Any questions or comments from the public? Tucker, do you have any more closings?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make sure to add that item to the May 2nd agenda.
Great, so I'll close item 5, Article 18, town meeting discussion, and open the main event, Article 6, Surfside Crossing discussion. So we have a number of members of the public here today, I think, to talk about this. Has everybody on the board in the paperwork saw the statement issued by the select board and Surfside Crossing that was circulated last week. We wanted to put this onto the agenda to just have an open discussion if people want to talk about it, kind of kick it around, have some idea. Tucker, do you have some statement that you'd like to make, or?
I mean, I don't have a particular statement to make, but we thought that given all the interest in this topic, that this might be in a forum to clear up any questions that we can anyway, clarify certain things. Like as an example, I think we heard those folks who got to attend the ZBA meeting last week. And I was able to attend part, but not all of it, due to a conflict with the Civic League Meet the Articles that I had to attend and speak at. But I think we heard a ZBA member basically make a comment about, so we're throwing, safety and sewer and any other concern out the window in favor of housing. And, I think that is an incorrect statement. The project is back before the ZBA, and the ZBA has latitude to impose conditions that are in line with the Housing Appeals Committee decision. So as an example, if the fire chief were to say, your design does not properly accommodate my fire trucks, that isn't up for discussion as far as the developer goes. They are going to have to meet that safety requirement. So without trying to speculate about why everyone is here today, I think we felt this was just a good opportunity to try to answer questions best as we could.
And with that, I'll continue, Tucker. The statement that was issued is the statement. There is no other contract in place. There's no existing negotiation in place. We are at a place where the developer is choosing to move forward with their, if I say this properly, at risk with their HAC decision, that Ed has publicly stated they're interested in getting to 75% year-round ownership occupancy, that we as a housing board support the most amount of year-round housing in that project as we can see. Dave?
To you, Brian, or to Tucker, where do we go from here? I mean, is it your thinking that we are going to negotiate with the developer, or what? Where are we going from here, I guess is the question for me. Like, where are we?
Penny?
Yeah, why are we involved in this?
Well,
At
I
this
think there's a
point?
hope. I think there's a hope that we can be part of a larger group that creates restrictions for year-round residency and occupancy. 80%, or excuse me, 25% of the units do fall into the affordable category. And if they are willing to take any more of the units into an affordable covenant restriction, whether it's similar to 150% like the existing covenant program or some other level, what role could we take then in managing restrictions?
Yeah, I would like to wait. I personally think that this is premature and we should wait until there's some sort of agreement. I mean, have we been asked to do this by the select board?
So
I was surprised to see this on the agenda, I have to tell you.
okay. Brooke, can I have you answer the question that was directed to the select board?
Sure. Conversations among various groups and entities within the community that might provide alternative funding sources for deed restriction buy down. Basically everything is on the table to achieve the goal of 75%, the joint goal of 75% of the units being owned and or occupied by year-round at Surfside Crossing. The participation in achieving that goal could be broad, will be likely be broad, to include both public and private entities, different entities holding restrictions, different types of restrictions. So it's kind of all on the table. It's an opportunity to create some new programs within the community for deed restricted occupancy at the year-round level. And so it was important for me as a select board member, I can speak only for myself, that that we be at the table, not as legal litigants, but as to be invited to the table to participate in how this goal of the developers might be achieved. And it is a goal that I share. And I think from our conversation at our last meeting that I took, that this group also shares as a goal to achieve the highest level of year-round occupancy at the development as possible. So I would say there is nothing on the table for this board to discuss today, other than to say we may be invited to participate in some form or forms of how this goal is achieved, and in different ways yet to be determined. And so I think an opportunity for community discussion around that was why this is on the agenda today.
Go ahead, Penny, for a follow-up.
Yeah, just quickly. Thank you, Brooke, for that. I don't want to be speaking about any of this in a speculative way because I am not informed enough about it to do that. And that's how I feel at this point. When somebody comes to us with a concrete request, we'll have an obligation to sit down and listen and vet it. That's where I am. Thanks.
Fair. Thank you, Penny. Dave, you put your hand up a minute ago and
Yeah, no, I think that question was premature. And in a lot of regards, I agree with Penny, but I think that we need to be part of that formulating whatever it is. If this is the road we're going down, we need to stay engaged. We can't just wait for someone to bring us something. So I don't know enough to really on what the plan is other than the statement. So yeah, I'm hoping for the best.
thank you, Dave. Meg?
Thanks, Brian. I want to add the commentary that I'm hopeful that this conversation can add as a catalyst to further the year-round deed restriction conversation that we're having. So maybe within that context, that's sort of a bigger picture for us to be looking at and maybe spur us on some further movement quicker so we can be a part of the conversation. And I do appreciate Tucker's comment clarifying for everyone here and everyone watching the ZBA's continued role in the process.
Thank you, Meg. Any other members before I turn to the public? Ms. Stockman?
Hey, good afternoon. I guess the first thing that I want to say is that I was really pleased to see Tucker's presentation. It's, I voted on a bunch of stuff and I never knew where the money went. So I did screenshots and I can look at that. And in addition to these things are not mutually exclusive, what I have to say next, I'm wicked grateful. I'm super grateful for the hard work that you guys are all doing. And yeah, I guess that's that. And I think that so many people have shown up at this meeting. Speaking for myself, I have shown up at this meeting because when I asked Erica Mooney who had put together the joint statement, I was told that it was Andrew Vorse, Tucker Holland, and Brian Sullivan with input from the select board and also Brooke Moore being on the select board and voting being one of the 3 people who voted to drop the lawsuit. There's just a whole lot of crossover here. And I have some questions, if the Affordable Housing Trust were to be in charge of distributing money or overseeing the project, I have future questions about conflict of interest. And I also I guess I want to say that there's no more leverage. There's no more leverage. And the joint statement that was created, there's no teeth, there's nothing there. And we've watched these guys. I watched them for 4 years. I met them first time December in 2018. And it's so alarming and super disappointing to me. And I understand the goal of affordable housing. I get it. I've lived in affordable housing. I get it. And I would not want to see like a drachma of my tax money that is voted on through all town meeting and then ratified in an election going for the up to 20% profit for Surfside Crossing. It's not why I voted for it in the first place. So thank you. Thank you for hearing me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joan. Joan, the slides that Tucker presented are available on the trusts section of the town website. So you don't need to use the screenshot. You can download the PDF
Thank you.
and share it.
Quick
amongst-
access. I was looking for quick access, but
Ms. Perry?
There's a couple Ms. Perry's on. Do you mean?
Oh, sorry,
Perry?
Megan. I'm sorry.
Oh. Okay, thank you. So from what I've just heard, could you please confirm that this board did not request the chair or the housing director be the ones negotiating this deal?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Go ahead, Penny.
So I'm asking if the
Yeah,
Affordable
I can
Housing
answer.
Trust-
Megan, I can answer that question through Sally to you. This board has never discussed this as a board.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that because it stated that the chair and the housing director negotiated this deal with Andrew Vorson. So I wanted to make sure the board was unaware of those negotiations.
That's not
Um,
correct. This board did take a vote to support the select board in this decision. And it was a unanimous vote at the time we voted. Penny, I'll have to go back and see if you were,
I don't think I was at that meeting. So.
yeah.
This,
So-
this was an executive session prior to the select board executive session. This board was
I was
pulled
not at
because
the
it was
meeting.
subject litigation. And at the time, the members present,
Unanimously approved to support the statement.
Thank you
Okay,
for that.
so now that there's no longer litigation, may I please have a copy of those meeting minutes from the executive session regarding that vote?
I don't know how to do that, Megan, personally, but I don't know how to answer your question because I don't know how to do that, but I'm assuming there's a way to figure that out.
Sure,
I
I'm
apologize.
sure I could probably
Yeah.
email Maureen Coleman or somebody along those lines for a FOIA on it. I try not to do FOIAs unless I have to. So that was one question I had. And then I just wanted to reiterate, there's nothing in writing regarding this good faith agreement. So there's no guarantee that the developers are going to do any more than they are required by law, correct?
The only thing
that
I'm
is
writing up,
correct.
yeah, is the
There's no
statement,
written agreement.
the
Perfect.
statement
Okay.
that was issued is the only written agreement. Or not
Okay,
even
and-
agreement, the only written thing.
And along those lines, I'm gonna step out on a limb here and just say, I'm guessing most people, when they do job contracts and take on a job, they have a contract in writing. So I'm confused why we wouldn't have a contract in writing with developers on something as important as this. So that's not a question, just more of a statement. And then could you guys please confirm what constitutes year-round?
That's a great question, Megan. At this time, my understanding is there are multiple different definitions. The Housing Covenant Program, as administered by Housing Nantucket, has 10 months and a day. The tax code is 6 months and a day. There are a variety of definitions across the state. At the moment, Julian Sear is working on adding language at the State House to across the whole state. It is likely going to be modified through the process, so it's not even worth. So to answer your question, there is not a specific definition at this point, which is one reason that I am hopeful to be able to help craft a restriction or participate in crafting a restriction that it meets a year-round criteria that people are happy with.
Okay, so roughly about 183 days is considered a year round. Does that sound fair to say?
It depends on what you're looking at, Megan. I referenced a couple different ones. Housing Nantucket is 10 months in a day. The tax code is 6 months in a day. So if you choose
guess-
to look at the lowest
I'm
common
sorry.
denominator, correct at 183.
So I guess I'm looking for legally, because I'm not
I'm
sure that,
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to get baited into that.
yeah, I just don't know that Housing Nantucket would be what would be held up in court. You know what I mean? Like, you see where I'm coming from on that?
Well, it is a restriction that is filed with your deed and it is a covenant, so it is legally binding in that sense. But again, there's a multitude of definitions and it becomes what happens in the course of the next few months with how does the developer move forward? What restrictions are created that would then be filed on deeds for this neighborhood? There's a lot of work to work through and get through here. So it
Absolutely.
depends on how you choose to look at, the situation.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions for the time being.
You're welcome. Megan, Meg Browers, excuse me.
Just a point of clarification for me. So currently, we don't have an affordable housing trust definition of year-round. We don't have policies or protocols that would require us to have the year-round definition yet, correct? Because our housing offerings or support systems are based on income. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brooke. Thank you.
to address this, the definition of year-round is defined by the deed restriction of each program that is funded with our funding. So closing cost assistance fund, people who are purchasing different deed restricted units that are available in the community. The one for the Housing Covenant Program is defined a certain way. Others are defined by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So each individual property has a deed restriction that defines its ownership and occupancy requirements. And year-round is a term we throw around, but as Brian pointed out, it has multiple definitions across the various programs that exist. So in developing restrictions for any new property or a new type of restriction, we would be defining it for the deed restriction that would fit with those units. Were they subsidized in any way, or the buyer accepted a deed restriction to put on those units? So that is to be fleshed out. However, we think of that covenant program is 10 months in a day. The DHCD restricted units, the Habitat has their own, right? So they differ across different programs. And so this agreement ultimately will likely involve different types of deed restrictions and perhaps different definitions of year-round. The intent here is going into this is people who live and work on Nantucket.
Thank
So,
you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Brooke. Megan Perry, follow up?
Thank you, Brian. To Brooke's comment there, I'm concerned because yes, there's a lot of work to be done to really flesh that out a bit, but nothing's in writing regarding that. So there's no guarantee that that has to happen. That's something that should have been, the details should have been worked out before you lost all leverage. And so I'm very concerned about how that is going to occur. Is there any inkling that the developers or anybody purchasing and deed restricting are going to want to do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Tucker?
Well, is there any inkling that the developer wants to have 75% of the development serve year-rounders and have programs associated with ensuring that? I mean, for sure, there's an inkling of that. They're out there publicly stating that they want to do it. I think there's a misconception maybe that there was all kinds of leverage around the lawsuit being out there. The developer was proceeding at risk. And, maybe others were getting different advice, but the leverage that the community, let's say, had in this case, as I understand it, was time. And that leverage was back at the beginning. The more time that expired, the more leverage went down. So I'm not sure there was tons to apply here. I think what had changed in the last few months is what I just noted, that the developers were out there themselves publicly stating that they see the best version of this project serving year-rounders to the 75% level. And I think that is a good outcome for this project if it can be achieved. We won't be at the table if we're sitting in court with them. So I think this was an opportunity to move forward in a way that ultimately could best serve the community.
Thank you, Tucker. There's a Mary with their hand up, and I don't know who Mary is, and because your last name's not listed. So, Mary.
It's Mary Mack. I don't know why my last name isn't listed. It usually was, but I'll try to fix that later. I'm just wondering, why are there so many different definitions around what is year round? And wouldn't it be so much easier if the definition was the same, so that it wasn't always rehashed over and over again as to what that definition is? I'm just wondering why. And one other thing, I know that what you guys are doing and trying to work through, I know that it is complicated, but sometimes it seems like it doesn't have to be as complicated as it is. And that's all I really have to say. And just, I guess, if somebody can answer the question as to why there are so many definitions of what is year round. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Thanks for fixing your name on there. Look forward to you helping us make this less complicated, because yes, it is. My rudimentary understanding of the reason we don't have a definition is it's currently not in the Mass General Law. And so that, I believe, has to happen first for us to then create it, which earlier I mentioned Julian Sears making an effort to add language in that each community can then take on and ratify as needed for that community. Before I come back to you, Mary, I'm going to go to Brooke and then Penny. Go ahead, Brooke.
So to answer Mary's question, the term as it's used is sort of a phrase we use to describe a set of people who live here year round, right? And then how does it get codified in law and for what purpose, right? So if you want to be a voter here, if you want to declare your residency here, it sort of depends on the purpose of defining it. And those different reasons to define it may have different interests or different purposes. That's why they can be different, right? So a housing program that, I don't know, and Penny may be able to answer this, why the Covenant program defined it as 10 months and a day. My guess is likely because they thought a teacher should be able to go away for the summer and live here 10 months out of the year or something like that, right? So there are different rationales for different definitions. And I think this is a really good point in our history where we might come to a consensus on how we define that. And some of it's out of our purview. The state defines it, and we may disagree with the HCD on how we want to define it for a different set of housing units than those subsidized by the state. So yes, it's complicated. I'd love to simplify it as much as possible as well.
Penny.
Yeah, just to quickly sort of hop on what Brooke just said. Different entities were organized for different purposes, and some of them are not just local. We have Habitat for Humanity, which is, worldwide. We have the Housing Needs Covenant Program. We have the Housing Authority, which is funded by federal and state dollars. And again, as Brooke said, DHCD has their own definitions and requirements. And this was not all formed at the same time. It was over time. And each spoke to different specific needs. And that's really where we are. And we are working on streamlining a definition tied to things like employment and voter registration, and obviously residency for a certain number of months. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Mary, did you want to follow up on that since it was addressed to you?
No, I mean, I understand all what everyone is saying. It's just, it would be easier if it were simplified, and how that can be done, I don't have the answer to that. But
Those of us that are here regularly agree with you that it could be simpler.
yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mary. Deanne Atherton,
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
we can, Deanne.
Wonderful. Greetings to you all. I am still, as one citizen, trying to understand the process that went on that resulted in this agreement and the dropping of the lawsuit. So I will ask you the same question that I asked at the ZBA meeting. Who negotiated this agreement on behalf of the town?
Brooke?
There is no agreement. Let's make that clear. There's a joint statement. And it was a number of people in conversation that brought a recommend, and the recommendation to the select board came through the municipal housing director, Tucker Holland.
Is that clear enough, Deanne?
Well, with all respect, it's not. What members of our town government spoke directly with the developers? While it's not an agreement, we'll call it a non-agreement, but it was sufficient enough to drop the lawsuit. And there are many of us who are just curious about who negotiated or who was in direct discussion with the developers.
Over a period of time, Deanne, I have spoken to the developer over the last 3 years. Is
I
that
have
clear?
spoken to the developer over the last 4 years.
As have I.
So that's the answer to my question.
I think the way that I'm not sure what more you're looking for, Deanne.
I'm sorry it's so confusing. It seems very clear to me. There is a statement of principles that was released by the town, and clearly there are individuals who must have come together to compose that document with the agreement of the developers, and we're just asking who did that.
Does anybody here know who did that? I don't know. Sully, through you.
The statement was issued by the developer and the select board. I have had discussions with the developer over the years in some concepts that exist in that. I did not negotiate anything. It is a statement delivered by the developer. Outside of that, by the developer and the select board. Outside of that, I can't I don't have any clearer way to say that.
Okay, just one more on this and I'll go to my last one. So the select board someone must have recommended this document, this statement of principles to the select board for their review and action in executive session. So who recommended that this statement be adopted?
I recommended it.
Tucker recommended it, and as previously mentioned in this meeting, Deanne, the Affordable Housing Trust Board in executive session unanimously recommended it, with the exception of Penny, who wasn't in at that meeting.
All right, thank you. Then my second question and my last one is sort of in my reading of the statement of principles in the non-agreement, there seems to be no reference to short-term rentals or the ability of owners in the Surfside Crossing development to have any restrictions on short-term rentals. Was that ever considered?
I'm sure that it was some level of consideration, because it seems like everywhere you turn, people are talking about short-term rentals right now. It was not pertinent in this document.
So was it ever considered?
Just a moment, Deanne. Brooke, and then David.
So, as a select board member, I am deferring all conversations about short-term rentals to the outcome of the short-term rental work group. So, any inclusion of short-term rental restrictions that come outside of the output of that work group seem premature to me. So I would not have engaged. I would not have chosen to include anything about it in this conversation. Though that's not to say that I believe the developers have stated somewhere in their documents that they have some limitations on short-term rentals proposed for the development, but that's not that's outside of any town restrictions or anything like that. So my general feeling as a select board member is we defer to the short-term rental work group on how we will oversee and regulate short-term rentals as a community. Obviously, a development that has its own homeowners association has the right to do whatever they want in that regard. But that's not what we're doing in this conversation at this point.
Thank you.
David, did you want to have a comment?
Yeah, I don't believe we allow that to happen in any properties that we hold deed restrictions on. I mean, covenant program, you can't short-term rent. So I think in some sense it's baked in, and then the other pieces, I think hopefully will come together with the work group.
Thank you, Dave. Deanne, did that finish your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mary Mac, your hand is still up. Is that just a technical issue?
Yes, it's a technical issue, sorry.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to make sure I gave you space if you needed it.
Okay, I'm putting it down now.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions, or items for discussion? I know we have a fair amount to continue on, so seeing nobody jump at it, I'm going to close item 6, Surfside Crossing discussion, and move to a proposal by Shelley Lockwood, item number 7. Shelley, with that, I will open to you.
Thank you, Brian. I'm sorry to follow such a contentious issue, because this is a clean, separate idea. And I would like to ask everybody to scrub their brain and put this on a separate plate. Okay. I have an idea about helping us house workers on Nantucket. So it could be, it could have a bunch of things thrown at it, but let's just see if it even gets legs first. So I wrote some notes because I'm nervous, so I'm going to read. I want to start by letting you know I don't represent any group or nonprofit. I'm not a small business owner, which my idea concerns. This idea will not directly affect me, except that I live on Nantucket, love the island, our quality of life, and I believe making the island safer and more equitable for everyone benefits us all. My idea isn't intended to usurp any group or organization currently working on untangling the knot of affordable housing. As anyone who's put thought into the issue can attest, it's a complex issue and will take a multi-pronged approach to solve. I was in discussion about this idea. I've spoken with Brian Sullivan, Tucker Holland, and Jamie Feely. I've received their invaluable feedback and encouragement. One of the ways I was putting this idea out there as far as trying to house employees was, it's going to take death by 1,000 cuts. And Jamie actually flipped that around and said, how about healing by 1,000 sutures? And I thought that was a much better way to look at this as a community. So the premise of my idea is to take some of the products and initiatives that we already have in process, like in working now, some from Covenant, some from Housing Trust, some whatever's out there. I work in real estate, so I know there's mortgage products, there's closing cost assistance, there's down payment assist, there's a variety of products, I guess, to help people buy their first home. My hope is to create a new set of parameters and conditions, taking those products and then extend those benefits to a new group of small business owners. I have two simple goals: to help small business owners provide housing for year-round and seasonal employees, and to provide stable, clean, safe, fairly priced housing to year-round and seasonal employees. Clearly, this is in the early idea stages. There would have to be, in my humble opinion, a covenant-esque restriction on this situation, in that if benefits were extended to small business owners to purchase houses to put employees in, those homes would then have to stay in the loop and be sold back into the employee housing covenant program, for lack of a better way to explain it. Obviously, there'd have to be strict eligibility rules for small businesses under a certain number of employees, not to get into the year-round debate, but owners of the companies must live on Nantucket as their primary residence. I mentioned that the houses couldn't be sold out of the loop. I understand that this idea that the Housing Trust, Tucker and I had a great conversation, that the goals of the Housing Trust is to bring home ownership to an individual level. And I understand this doesn't exactly fit in the definition of your ultimate goal, which is individual homeowners. I don't know that this is exact, how this will end up playing out as a vehicle. But in my opinion, working in real estate, asking an individual or a family, even with substantial programs that help, to buy a home here is still very difficult. It's still an enormous financial consideration. And my hope is that we could put that burden of home ownership onto broader shoulders of a business owner who has perhaps more resources, the ability to depreciate, write it off on taxes, charge rent, a lot of different levers that a small business owner could use to soften the blow of taking on that mortgage. The idea would be that the business owners themselves would buy these homes. So then there's pride of ownership, there's upkeep, there's rent that they're going to charge for their employees. And again, I don't have every nuance of this worked out. I'm presenting it to the great minds on this screen in hopes of finessing this into perhaps another way that we can address some of the less pleasant aspects of housing on this island. And one of them is, as we all know, and very few of us like to talk about at cocktail parties, we have people living in cars and taking showers at the Boys and Girls Club, right? So it's a real underbelly that I feel we're not addressing hard as we could. And I'd like to see more effort put into it. So I have more notes, plenty of them. I have more thoughts in my head. But I'm just putting it out there in theory at the moment. Happy to follow it through. Should I be given any direction from any organization on the island? I don't intend to just launch the idea and walk away. But I do think with the programs that we have in place, with ideas that have already been vetted and are legal, if we extend the benefits, or call them, or products, to another group of individuals, small business owners on Nantucket, at least we can get more people into safe, secure, clean housing. Now, that's not a path toward home ownership. I understand that for the individuals, but it is ownership for island residents who own businesses here. So that's the gist of it, and not to bring up Surfside Crossing or Jamie Feely, but I did talk to him. He asked me to quote him exactly because the situation is contentious, to say the least. And his quote, when I asked him about, at Tucker's suggestion, I talked with Jamie just to see how he was feeling about my idea. And his comment was, he felt it could be applicable to one of the restriction categories currently developing for Surfside Crossing. So it's not everything he's trying to do, but he did see where an employee housing, anyway, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to interpret, because he asked me specifically to keep it precisely what he said. So
Shelley, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your effort in coming here, taking the time to write the notes, kind of, work within your socials community, kind of kicking ideas and then bringing it here. With that, I got some hands up. So thank you very much, because I know it was a leap for you to come on camera and talk, and I really appreciate the fact that you did it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Tucker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to Shelley for, just as you said, for, thinking creatively, bringing ideas, being willing to discuss them and see where they might lead. One of the people that I had hoped would be able to join us today for the discussion, and I don't see her on here yet, is our town council, Vicky Marsh. Because as you and I spoke about, Shelley, typically the trust is helping individuals in a variety of different ways. And this is obviously a little bit different animal, worth investigating, but Vicky can really guide us on ultimately what is or isn't possible in terms of trust involvement with something like this.
Tucker, should I reach out to her directly, or should you make an intro? It's not really your wheelhouse, so I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I also don't want to let an opportunity go by and let it languish.
No, I understand. So she is aware of it. She received your summary, and she had hoped to be here today, but is actually attending another town meeting matter simultaneously. And so we do have a meeting next Tuesday, May 2nd, and I expect that she might be able to attend that, and we could continue the discussion in that regard then.
Excellent.
Brooke?
Hi, Shelley. Thank you so much for bringing the idea. As I always do when it comes to employer-sponsored housing, I would like you to consider the unique and perhaps sometimes unintended consequences of employer housing in terms of the dynamic between employer and employee in a housing market like ours. And I always have grave concern because I know of examples of people whose employers have held housing over their heads in terms of other compensation and other employer-employee dynamics here on Nantucket, because frankly, if you're an employer housing, you've got nowhere to go if something goes sideways in that relationship. So just something to consider and
I
to
did-
think
I
and to
actually
think
did
into
consider
your.
that, and my daughter
Mhm.
lived in Jackson Hole for a while and had her housing dependent on her employer, so I kind of sussed it out with her and got some feedback from a firsthand experience. I understand there are unintended consequences to every single product we're gonna create, right?
Yeah.
And so it has to weigh on the scale of what does it do versus, or what does it not do? I can't come up with a silver bullet. It's just one more idea to help. And we just have to hope that the people getting these mortgages and vesting themselves in the process of owning another home on Nantucket, which is significant, use that goodwill of the effort it took and it extends to their employees.
I agree. And I guess what I'm thinking about is there something in documentation that could address or could somehow forestall these concerns if this program were to get developed, is kind of what I'm saying. Is there
I hope so. I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope
Yeah,
so.
just a thought. Yep.
Yeah.
One comment that I'd like to make is I think there are a lot of opportunities that exist, Shelley, in the existing zoning code that have been developed over the last number of years that aren't necessarily well recognized by the business community and have been utilized to the opportunity, whether it's the workforce housing opportunities that exist, the employer dormitory code, the overlay district or bonuses that are achieved. There are a lot of opportunities that are in the code that can make real estate less expensive by creating more units within the existing situation, if that makes any sense, housing more people. So that's another good venue for you to be concurrently looking at as you're coming up with these concepts and how to work through them. I do like to Brooke's point and your acknowledgement, right? The confluence of employee housing is a tricky space to be in for a variety of reasons, but I do appreciate you bringing it here. Thank you.
And Brian, can you just shoot me a note about what that avenue is I should go down?
I will. Yes, I will try. I will try
you.
to do my best.
Thanks.
I may point you to somebody else who knows the code better than I do.
Fine, perfectly. Yeah.
Any more on Shelley's? Seeing none, I'll close that item for now. I apologize. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I'm getting a little technical assistance. Can somebody tell me the next item that's looking at it?
Down payment assistance.
Yeah, down payment.
Down payment assistance. Thank you. So with that, we'll come to Brooke, right?
Yeah, Tucker, did my spreadsheet get in the packet? You guys, I'm sorry, as you all know, I've been a little out of pocket this last week, so.
Completely understandable. Didn't
I don't think that it did, Brooke.
Yeah, may I request that we roll this forward to our next meeting, because I had a sort of a decision tree for us to evaluate. And it would be much more efficient if everybody had a chance to look at it first. And then, yeah, and then we can also just talk about how it might be expanded from, there's sort of this bridge between down payment assistance and deed restriction buy down that we keep sort of circling around. And that's also come back into my head a little bit about, like, do we create a two-pronged approach? One which is a down payment assistance for houses that are already deed restricted, and another at a larger scale that would actually acquire new deed restrictions as we define them. So, and I think there's room for more conversation about this if we could postpone this till our next meeting.
Great. So let's keep the item open and we'll roll it to the next meeting. With that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Again, I need some help. I apologize.
Other business.
Okay. Is there any other business that wasn't known about in time of the agenda being written? Seeing none, we'll close other business. I'm really sorry to ask for the help with the agenda, getting some help on my.
Board comments.
Any board comments? Seeing none, close board comments. And then look, I think the next one's look for a motion to move to executive session. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we move to executive session for the purpose of considering the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of our public body, not to return to the regular meeting.
So that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second. With a
Second
question,
from Dave.
with a question.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Did
Discussion.
you email us that link for that, Tucker? The executive session?
You should have received a link from when Haley was here, but I can recirculate to the group.
Okay, I can search it. Thank you.
Vote by roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Brooke Moore. Couldn't hear you, Brooke, sorry.
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. Thank you, members and public. Members, we'll see you at executive session.
Thank you.